أحسنهم يحسنون ألا يظن أولئك أنهم مبعوثون ليوم عظيم يوم يقوم الناس لرب العالمين كلا إن كتاب الفجار لفي سجين وما أدراك ما سجين كتاب مرقوم ويل يومئذ للمكذبين الذين يكذبون بيوم الدين وما يكذب به إلا كل معتد أثيم إذا تتلى عليه آياتنا قال أساطير الأولين كلا بل ران على قلوبهم ما كانوا يكسبون كلا إنهم عن ربهم يومئذ لمحجوبون ثم إنهم لصال الجحيم ثم يقال هذا الذي كنتم به تكذبون كلا إن كتاب الأبرار لفي إليين وما أدراك ما إليون كتاب مرقوم يشهده المقربون إن الأبرار لفي نعيم على الأرائك ينظرون تعرف في وجوههم نضرة النعيم يسقون من رحيق مختوم ختامه مسك وفي ذلك فليتنافس المتنافسون ومزاجه من تسنيم عينا يشرب بها المقربون إن الذين أجرموا كانوا من الذين آمنوا يضحكون وإذا مروا بهم يتغامزون وإذا انقلبوا إلى أهلهم انقلبوا فكهين وإذا رأوهم قالوا إن هؤلاء لضالون وما أرسلوا عليهم حافظين فاليوم الذين آمنوا من الكفار يضحكون على الأرائك ينظرون هل ثوب الكفار ما كانوا يفعلون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Thank you very much for that beautiful recitation. We are now very fortunate to have Shaykh Arif, who will be speaking to us on the topic of delving deeper into the Qur'an. Let's welcome him with salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Shaykh Arif is a regular here, and inshallah, and many of you already know him, but for those who don't, he founded Al-Mahdi Institute in 1993 and currently serves as director and senior lecturer in Usul Fiqh and Muslim philosophy. For over 20 years, he's been in the forefront of developing and delivering advanced Islamic studies. He was educated in Madrassah Syed al-Khoei from 1985. He furthered his studies in Islamic Seminary in Qom, and he attended private training and research studies with leading scholars of Qom between 1990 and 1994. And on his return to the UK after founding the Al-Mahdi Institute, he continued his Bahth al-Kharij training in Usul Fiqh and under Ayatullah Amini, a student of Ayatullah Khoei. We're very fortunate to have him today speaking to us on this topic. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin wa ashabihi al-muntajabin wa ala man tabi'ahum bi ihsan ila qiyam yawmiddin. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa ahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Amma ba'd, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. One of the things that strikes you most when you read the Quran is the sequence of the verses. And we know that the Blessed Prophet did not memorize those sequences, and the verses were coming upon the Prophet as they were, impromptuously at times. At times he was seeking for verses to be revealed upon him, and they were being withheld. I'll give an example as we go into this. He had a dream that he was entering the Masjidul Haram and shaving his head off and performing the rituals of Hajj. So he got his community of reverts or converts or faithful in Medina to come with him, and we know he was intercepted and he could not get to Mecca. Now here was a problem, that the Prophet had a premonition and he acted in accordance with it, and he went there and he was not allowed to do Hajj. Now, of course, the faithful were all very skeptical of him, that what happened? This is a Prophet. He had a dream. The dream is supposed to be from God, and we are not going inside there. Now, when we explore the Quran, we will see that dreams are not possibly coming from God. Yes? Now, 2 years later, Surah Fath is talking about that dream. When the Prophet indeed enters into Makkah, the Quran says, Allah made your dream happen, that you shall enter into the Masjidul Haram and you will shave your heads off or you will clip your hair. So the Prophet there did not know what was going to happen, and it happened in a delayed fashion, but he acted in accordance with his dream. There's a lot there. There is a lot there. So we know from this that the Blessed Prophet was not aware of what was going to be revealed upon him. I'm giving this little prelude to create a context for us. Ma kunta tadri mal kitab wal iman. You did not know, O Muhammad, what the book is. Now, the book is not necessarily the Quran. The Quran makes a distinction between the book and the Quran. Book and Torah, book and Injil. It makes a distinction. And there are lots of distinctions. Kitabul Mubin, Ummul Kitab, Kitab, Quran, Furqan. There are different distinctions, just as there are distinctions within the nouns that depict human beings. We say insan. But there is also bashar, and they are used differently. Bashar means with an exposed skin. When Nabi Nuh was preaching, the Quran says the only thing that prevented them from disbelieving in Nabi Nuh is that they are saying, has God sent a bashar with a message? Which seems that they... Oh, brilliant. Just press it, right? Yeah. Okay, great. Great. So, there you can see the word bashar has been used, but at other places the word insan has been used. At other places the word ayyuhan nas has been used. These are different points of reference. You get Bani Adam, you get Bani Israel, you get ayyuhan nas. So for example, on that note, in Surah A'raf, when we read the verse, with akhadha rabbuka min bani Adam, and when your Lord took from Bani Adam min dhuhurihim dhurriyatuhum, from their loins, their progenies, وَأَشْهَدُهُمْ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ, and made them bear witness upon themselves. Alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Lord? Qalu bala, they said yes. Now the Quran follows it by saying, least on the day of Qiyamah, you turn around and say to me, you are not aware of this. Now when we look at the exegesis in exegetical literature, it will say that Adam saw his progeny and they were made to bear witness. But the Quran does not talk about Adam, it's talking about Bani Adam. The reference is not Adam, but it's a post-Adamic state. It's another state that the Quran is talking about. It's not talking about Adam at all. It's talking about Bani Adam. Then again, Alam a'ahad ilaykum ya Bani Adam an la ta'budu shaitan. Did we not take a pledge from you, O Bani Adam, that you shall not devote yourselves to shaitan? It's Bani Adam. It has nothing to do with the Adamic state or the state in which Adam was in Eden. It's a later state. So when we read the Quran attentively, we find a very different world of meanings coming through. Now we are going to today scratch the surface of certain things that I want to discuss, talking about the sequences. Now the Prophet Muhammad could never have memorized these sequences. This is not something that the Prophet, Blessed Prophet Muhammad, has given. In kuntum fi raybin mimma nazzalna ala abdina fa'atu bi suratin min mithlihi. If you are in any doubt in relation to what we have revealed, we, not I, again. There's a big difference between we and I in the Quran. What we have revealed upon our servant or creature or slave, then bring a surah like it and call everyone apart from Allah. Why would Allah say call everyone apart from Allah? Can you see that? There's a lot of nuance here. There's a different world of meanings. It is not God talking. If you are in any doubt as to what we have revealed upon our servant Muhammad, then bring a surah from his like. Tabatabai makes an observation here that his like, he is uneducated. He hasn't read the Torah or the Injil. So by priority, he does not know these things. So get one like him and bring about a surah from him and call upon all your aids apart from Allah. He will just say, right? If it was Allah talking directly, he would say, ask all your aids apart from me. For example, so when we look at these subtleties, we see another world of meanings coming through. Now, can you all look there? There. Or on your smart devices. Now, the one thing we want to go through in the beginning part, and if we have time at the end, we will just analyze the verses of Miraj as well. Now, look, consider these verses. These are about Isa. The first verse is from Surah Al-Imran. The second one is from Maida. Now, Al-Imran and Maida have 6 odd years or 4 odd years difference between the two in terms of revelation. However, the verse in question in Surah Al-Imran was possibly revealed in the 9th year of Hijrah, when the Najrani delegation came to meet with the Prophet. So the first verse was revealed possibly 3 years after the second verse, even though the first surah was revealed prior to the second surah. Yes? So bear that in mind, that there is a 3 to 4 year difference between the two verses. What we are interested in is the precision of the sequences in these verses. Now I'll need somebody to translate for me. I'll ask somebody to do that. Yes, make that. Go for it. The first one first and then the second one. And I want us to pay attention to the sequence of these verses.
Surah Al-Imran, verse 49. And make him an apostle to the children of Israel, that I have come to you with a sign from your Lord, that I determine for you out of dust like the form of a bird, then I breathe into it, and it becomes a bird with Allah's permission. And I heal the blind and the lepers, and bring the dead to life with Allah's permission. And I inform you of what you should eat, and what you should store in your houses. Most surely there is a sign in this for you, if you are believers.
So this is in Al-Imran. Then the other verse is 3 to 4 years apart. Now look at that verse. This is Allah speaking to, or the Quran speaking to, Isa salamullah alayhi.
Surah Ma'idah, verse 110. When Allah will say, O Isa, son of Maryam, remember my favor on you and on your mother, when I strengthened you with the Holy Spirit, you spoke to the people in the cradle, and I, when of old age, and when I taught you the book and the wisdom and the Torah and the Injil, and when you determined out of clay a thing like the form of a bird by my permission, then you breathed into it, and it became a bird by my permission, and you healed the blind and the lepers by my permission, and when you brought forth the dead by my permission.
So
And
if you look at the sequence of creating the bird, curing diseases and leprosy, and resurrecting the dead, the first verse and the second verse, the sequence is exactly the same. Now, that is not something that the Blessed Prophet could have retained in his own mind. The accent has changed. In the first one, Isa is saying, I will create a bird or fashion a bird for you and blow into it. In the second one, remember, Isa, when you fashioned the bird and blew into it. In the first one, Isa is saying, and I cure the lepers and the blind. In the second one, and Isa, you cured the lepers and the blind through my consent. In the first one, and I shall resurrect the dead for you through the consent of God. In the second one, and you resurrected the dead with the consent of God. Now, such meticulous precision, we know it says something about this book. It's the first thing that opens your mind. Now, similarly, we are going through other verses, but you will very clearly notice that the prophets, when they introduce God, they will say, Fatir as-samawati wal-ard, by and large, Fatir. The word fatara is used, not any other word. Then there's a reason for fatara, because they were together and they were made to become detached and set apart from each other. In any case, let us look at the other set of verses about death and life, and I want to talk a little bit about it. These are verses which I've not arranged in terms of their sequence of revelation. I've just brought the verses out to see the consistency in these verses. The first verse is Surah Baqarah 28. Make that.
how do you deny Allah and you are dead and He gave you life? Again, He will cause you to die and again bring you to life. Then you shall be brought back to Him.
Then the verse in Surah Mulk.
Who created death and life that He may try you? Which of you is best in deeds? And He is the mighty, the forgiving.
And then 11th verse of Surah Ghafir.
They shall say, Our Lord, twice did you make us subject to death, and twice you have given us life. So we do confess our faults. Is there then a way to get out?
Now, in these three verses, the sequence is precise. Death comes before life. He created death and life. Kuntum amwatan fa ahyaakum. You are dead and He brought you to life. Amattana thnatain wa ahyaytana thnatain. You killed us twice and you brought us to life twice. Now, what does that say? That sequence in itself is telling us that death, we encountered death prior to encountering life. And a very close reading of the Quran will suggest that we were in a life before coming here. Contrary to what the philosophers advocate, I mean, Ibn Sina, Sohrawardi, they all say the commencement of life is from here. Mullah Sadra does not deny the possibility of a pre-worldly life for the souls, but he says it's not the same thing. This is the place where life of the soul begins in its individuation. I'm giving a paper on this in March, the pre-worldly human existence. But according to the Quran, death comes before life. And if you look at the Quran very carefully, human beings, or all of us, have existed in a pre-worldly life prior to encountering this life. And our passage into this life has been through the mediation of death. Now you can see, خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةِ كُنْتُمْ أَمْوَاتًا فَأَحْيَاكُمْ. And Quran expects us to remember that we were amwat. So when you say kuntum amwatan, you were, and you were dead, shows that we are beyond the states of death and life. So we are a salient reality who encounter death and who encounter life. Now, how we determine the meaning of death and life is obviously another story that Quran also tells us. But look at the sequences of the verses. Again, this proves that this book is actually from a very, very lofty source. Now, this is very intriguing. the verses on hearing, seeing, and thinking. You will find this sequence retained in terms of human existence. We gave you hearing, seeing, and thinking, and I'll explain this as we go through it. The first verse is from Surah Insan, 1 and 2.
Then there surely came over a man a period of time when he was a thing not worth mentioning. Surely we have created man from a small life germ uniting itself. We mean to try him, so we have made him hearing, seeing.
So you see here, at the outset of our creation, at the very beginning, God creates us, gives us the ability to hear, and gives us the ability to see. Now there is something in this sequencing. Now let's go on to the next verse of Surah Sajda, verse number 9.
Then he made him complete and breathed into him of his spirit, and made for you the ears and the eyes and the hearts. Little is it that you give thanks.
So it's talking about the Adamic sort of creation, the bodily creation of Adam. Not that Adam did not exist prior to the embodied state. Qur'an makes it clear that there was existence prior to embodying in this state. But in any case, he says he breathed into him the spirit. Then he gave you hearing, seeing, and afida, the ability to think, or minds, depending on how we interpret that. Surah Mulk, next one, verse number 23.
Say, he it is who brought you into being, and made for you the ears and the eyes and the hearts. Little is it that you give thanks.
Again, he raised you into existence, this existence, and gave you ears, eyes, and minds or hearts. Again, the sequence is retained. Another verse here is Surah Nahl. I have not quoted all of the verses, yes, been selective. Surah Nahl.
And Allah has brought you forth from the wombs of your mothers. You did not know anything, and He gave you hearing and sight and hearts that you may give thanks.
So here it's talking about the fetal formation. Gave you ears, eyes, and then minds. Now, if we look at this sequence, and we obviously contrast it with our medical knowledge now, and I'm sure there must be physicians here who will correct me if I'm wrong, that a fetus hears first, becomes aware through the sense of hearing. And babies, is that accurate? Yes. Yes? Yeah, who said yes? It's yes, yes? Okay. Then, you know, when we say, oh, the baby is looking at me, but they don't see. It's gradually they begin to see. And then, of course, after hearing, after seeing, after touching, we compare things and information. Then we begin to act in accordance with that information, and that is the point of afida, thinking on that information. Maybe not reasoning in the way that we reason in the adult stage, but they, in a rudimentary state, they do reason that this is hotter, this is brighter, this is colder, this is bigger, this is smaller. So hearing comes first, and then seeing, and then thinking. So there is a meaning within the sequence of how hearing and seeing are placed within the Qur'an. The first contact with the outside world for the individual consciousness is through the means of hearing, then through seeing, then comparing the information, and what we call thinking. Now let's go forward, and then we see what happens when God reverses this sequence. Look at verse of Araf 179.
And certainly we have created for hell many of the jinn and the men. They have hearts with which they do not understand, and they have eyes with which they do not see, and they have ears with which they do not hear. They are as cattle, nay, they are worse, in worse errors. These are the heedless ones.
So now when it comes to human souls who do not recognize the truth, the sequence is reversed. They have hearts with which they do not think, or minds with which they do not reflect accurately, eyes with which they see not, ears with which they hear not. Now this is amazing. As far as the existential state is concerned, the physical being, we hear first, we then see, we then think. But when it comes to people who are unable to evaluate information accurately, not because of any impediment in their sense of reasoning, but because of their inner state of obstinate denial, the sequence is reversed, that they are not thinking with hearts that they have. And therefore, they are not seeing accurately, because whatever they are feeling inside directs them to interpret whatever they are seeing in accordance with it. So when a person sees the Prophet Muhammad, a Bedouin, he says, Wallah ma hadha wajhul kadhab. By Allah, this cannot be the face of a liar. That's a person who is neutral towards the Prophet. But a person who recognizes the Prophet as a liar, he will say, this is the face of a liar, imposter. When a Bedouin or the Medinan delegation that went to Makkah, they heard the Prophet speak and he was reciting the verses of Surah Al-An'am. Do not kill. Be true to your covenants. Do not steal the wealth of an orphan. Do not kill your children. Transact accurately. They said, yes, he's making sense. He is making sense. They heard what he was saying. They said, he is making sense. When the Jewish people of that time, not all the Jews, of course, when the Jewish people of that time, they heard him, they said, he's just copying the Torah, and he's an imposter. So they have ears with which they hear not. In other words, their attitudes now impose upon them how they see and what they see, how they hear and what they hear. It's the same with us. When we like somebody, we will see a smile on their face and it will fill us with joy. When we hate somebody and then they smile, we will say they are scheming against us. So we see but we see not. We hear but we hear not. Now it's amazing that sequence is retained throughout the Quran. When the hearts are sealed, the sequence is hearts first and then hearing and seeing. Next verse is Surah Hajj.
Have they not travelled in the land so that they should have hearts with which to understand, or ears with which to hear? For surely it is not the eyes that are blind, but blind are the hearts which are in the breasts.
So again, you're seeing the hearts go first, and then it impacts every other organ of perception. Similarly, Surah Baqarah, verse 7.
Allah has set a seal upon their hearts and upon their hearing, and there is a covering over their eyes, and there is a great punishment for them.
Again, we are seeing hearts go first, and then it falters with whatever they see and whatever they hear. So in the first instance, whenever the description of the creation of Adam or insan as a whole or every individual child is concerned, seeing, hearing is first, then seeing, then thinking. When the ability of proper discretion goes, or understanding or denial comes into the heart, the sequence is reversed, and the reversed sequence is retained. That their hearts go first, then their hearing, and then their seeing, or seeing and hearing. Now look at the most amazing thing, the attributes of God. Many attributes of God are conjoined at the end of verses. Now every one of them tells a story, a profound story. But when seeing and hearing come together, a sequence is retained. Hearing and seeing, not seeing and hearing. You know, if I were to talk about God, I would say He is seeing and hearing. That's how I would phrase God. Seeing and hearing is just a natural thing to do. But whenever the Quran phrases the attributes of God, of seeing and hearing, it's always hearing and seeing. Let's look at a few examples. Surah Hajj 61.
That is because Allah causes the night to enter into the day and causes the day to enter into the night. And because Allah is hearing, seeing.
Can you see that? Hearing, seeing. And we want to work out why He says that. Surah Hajj 75.
Allah chooses apostles from among the angels and from among the men. Surely Allah is hearing, seeing.
Surah Shura, verse 11.
The originator of the heavens and the earth, he made mates for you from among yourselves and mates of the cattle too, multiplying you thereby, nothing like a likeness of Him, and He is the hearing, the seeing.
So in 3 verses that are in different places, 2 in Hajj, but one is 61, the other one is 75. And the Prophet, when the revelation would come to him, would speak it out. Now, I need to clarify this. If you look at Surah Qiyamah, لا أقسم بيوم القيامة ولا أقسم بنفس اللوامة. If we have time, we'll deal with it. We will see a theme in Surah Qiyamah, and abruptly there is a stop in the natural theme of the surah. And immediately the Quran says, لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به. O Muhammad, do not hasten to deliver it. We, إن علينا جمعه وقرآنه وإذا قرأناه فاستمع. In any case, I've forgotten. So you can imagine, I've read Surah Qiyamah every night, and I've forgotten at this point in time. So there was an abrupt stop. O Muhammad, do not hasten to deliver it. We will gather it, we will differentiate it, we will collect it, and we will recite it. That particular few verses finish, and then the theme continues. So you can see immediately that Surah Qiyamah was coming upon the Prophet. Maududi speculates that it was in the Meccan period. The Quran saw that the Prophet was struggling, lest he forgets, because he wasn't acquainted with how to retain the revelation in his humanness. So he wanted to quickly give it out so that everything can be recorded and nothing is forgotten. So immediately the Quran, the revelation of Surah Qiyamah, pauses. And then there's a direct address to Muhammad Rasulullah, looking at his own psychological state. Do not put yourself under so much stress. Do not hasten to deliver it. Be calm about it. If something is forgotten, we will repeat it. Yes? You can see that that change in accent does not belong in Surah Qiyamah, but because it was revealed, and it is revealed in the same sort of rhythm and ending, it is a part of Qiyamah. It's very eloquent, by the way, and it is retained within Surah Qiyamah, but it has got nothing to do with Surah Qiyamah. So the Prophet Muhammad's personal state is being taken into consideration. So considering that, the Prophet Muhammad was not retaining the sequences. They were coming upon him and he was giving them out immediately. Now, Surah Luqman, verse 28.
Neither your creation nor your raising is anything but a single soul. Surely Allah is hearing, seeing.
Then Surah Ma'idah, verse 1.
Allah indeed knows the plea of her who pleads with you about her husband and complains to Allah, and Allah knows the contentions of both of you. Surely Allah is hearing, seeing.
So why does Allah insist, or why does the Quran insist on this sequence of hearing and seeing as far as God is concerned? It's pointing out existentially the human facet or existential facet that human beings hear first and then they see later. But then it is reflected in the being of God as well, that God hears and then God sees. Can you see there's a phenomenal thing going on here, that our author has fashioned us in his form. The Prophet said, right? يُصَوِّرُ فِي الْأَرْحَامِ كَيْفَ يَشَاءُ وَمَا يَشَاءُ. The Prophet said he has created us in his image. So the image of our Creator, I mean, of course, he doesn't have physical ears and eyes like we have, and I know otherwise I'll be killed here. But he insists on that sequence nonetheless. Our author is giving us his image. Imam Sadiq had said that an ant assumes that the perfection of its Lord is in its Lord having 2 antennas. And if its Lord were not to have those 2 antennas, its Lord would be deficient. So the ant's Lord resembles the ant. The human Lord resembles the human. We are direct images of our God. And I know what you guys are thinking or not thinking or don't want to think or want to think. And of course, you're as confused as I was at the age of 40. In any case, going further into it, if you look at the invalidity of wudu, how do we determine the invalidity of wudu? When we shut our eyes, we are still aware, aren't we? So the definition of sleep by fiqh standard is what? When we become unaware through the sense of hearing. Because when we become unaware through the sense of hearing, it shows that we are now totally cut off from the world outside us. And therefore you can see that even the fiqh rulings are actually based on facet of our existence. They are existential. Many of those that we have got right, not those that we've got wrong, obviously. They've gone somewhere off. Now, let's look at the meanings embedded within the meeting, the whole story of Moses meeting the servant of God whom God had taught from himself. Now, if we can bring that, and we need to go through it bit by bit. So, can you tell me what the story was there of Khidr and Moses? So, Moses meets Khidr, right? Is that what we understand in Surah Kahf? So, Moses says to Khidr, teach me from what you have been taught. Khidr says to this, one of the great five prophets, إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. You will have no patience, Moses. Moses is Kalimullah. He speaks with God. But Khidr says to Moses, you have no patience and you just can't learn from me. He says, Satajiduni sabiran inshallah. Or inshallah, what is it? Sabir. So he is using the word inshallah and it doesn't work for him. Just think about this carefully. When we invoke God and we say inshallah, there is a degree of confidence that is going to happen, right? Moses says, inshallah, I will be patient, right? Now he's using the word inshallah, his ulul azam, he's invoking God in all of this, he wants to learn and he says, I'll be sabir in his ulul azam. I mean, he's drowned the Pharaoh and whatever else he's done. He's got the book and he's spoken with God. وَكَلَّمَ اللَّهُ Musa taklima. And I mean, that's another sequence in the Quran that Moses is always being singled out as Kalim. Isa has always been singled out as a proximate angel. Isa is a proximate angel according to the Quran, according to the sequences. But here is Moses saying, inshallah, you will find me patient. And he said, okay, then follow me and don't ask me anything. And he has given a binding commitment that I will not ask anything. Fine. Now, Moses goes with Khidr. What happens? The first thing Khidr does is he wrecks the ship or punctures it or whatever. And Moses can't hold himself. He says, did you do this in order to do that? So he says, I told you you'll not have any patience with me. So first and foremost, Moses breaks his promise. 2, I don't know where the inshallah has gone. 3, Moses says, well, don't put me to shame because of what I forgot. So this is now Moses forgetting. So that says a lot about the theology that the Anbiya never forget. Doesn't it say a lot about our theology? Just that verse. And Moses isn't lying. He's being truthful that, look, I genuinely forgot. That's my disposition. I forget. In any case, he says, so now don't ask me anything after this. Then he said, yes, fine. Okay, I won't say anything. He said, there's something very audacious. He goes and kills a child. He said, how can you go and kill an innocent child? Khidr says, did I not tell you, you have no patience? You might be ulul azam in your world, but in my world, you don't have any patience. He's treating Moses like a disciple who, cannot be trained very easily. So Moses then feels a sense of embarrassment and he says, yeah, if I do that again, then you have a right to not teach me and you have a right to tell me that I should not accompany you. They build a wall. After building a wall, Moses is hungry. And he said, we could have gotten some recompense for this. We could have gotten some food because nobody was giving them any food. Now Moses was being clever here. He was thinking that if I tell him, why did we not take some money, he's going to tell me, you're asking me a question again. And you said you're not going to answer. So Moses is clever. You look at his humanness that is coming into play. So Moses is somehow cleverly phrasing himself. If we wanted to, we could have gotten something in return. Now Khidr is clever. He said, well, no, you've broken your promise again. That's it. Now, hada firaqun bayni wa baynak. This is where we separate now. It's like the Israelites. What they did was, of course, Moses was grand. Yeah, the guy is phenomenal. You read the Quran. The whole Quran is replete with Moses. There's nothing but Moses everywhere. There's a reason for it. But in any case, the Israelites were told, don't fish on Saturday. And so they started saying, okay, we want to be true to God, we will not fish on Saturday. Then they saw that on Sunday, the fish weren't coming. Only on Friday they were coming. No, only on Saturday. Not Friday, that's Muslims, right? On Sabbath, on Saturday. On Saturday. So they said, don't fish on Saturday. So then they said, right, we'll fish on Sunday and the rest of the day, 6 days, but the fish wouldn't show up. So then they said, you know what, this is not on. So they said, but what if we cast our nets inside the river on Friday? On Saturday, we will not retrieve them, but we will retrieve them first thing Sunday. So they said, fine, you know, we've outwitted God. God changed them into monkeys. Why? Because the whole thing there was that you knew the right and wrong beyond the word of the law in your own selves. You knew what was right, what was wrong. By twisting the word of the law and finding loopholes, you can't get away with God. Can you see that? So here is Moses being clever, you know. I mean, you got to give it to him. He was trying. He's hungry. He said, look, you could have gotten something and we are starved here. Khidr, looking at it from the perspective of what the truth inside Moses' soul is, he said, see, there you go, you've done it again. Now this is an Ulul Azam who has said, inshallah, given his word, he just can't bear with patience. Now what happens is a phenomenal truths are being given out. And I want us to analyze this, to see how depth the meaning of the Quran is that goes unnoticed. Now, Miqdad, if you can just read the verses after that, سَأُنَبِّئُكَ بِتَعْوِيلِ مَا لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ عَلَيْهِ صَبْرًا. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So Maulana is also a human being after all, you know. With the lack of real substance inside, you know, you start forgetting. مَا لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ عَلَيْهِ صَبْرًا. Slowly, yes, very slowly.
So now I will inform you of the significance of that which you could not have patience.
So first thing is the boat. Yeah? The first thing is the ship.
As for the boat, it belonged to some poor men who worked on the river, and I wished that I should damage it. And there was behind them a king who seized every boat by force.
So now, think about this carefully. Think about this carefully. I want to take some time over this. Many a times, unfortunate things happen to us, don't they? Afterwards, we see that due to that event, a lot of harm has been averted from us which we couldn't see at that time. But it transpires afterwards. Let's say somebody dies. It's a sad event when someone dies without being of that age. But then at times we see, in hindsight, we say, actually, you know what? It was the right time for that person to be taken. Sometimes somebody comes and knocks our car, right? Sometimes we get a theft. And then afterwards, in hindsight, we say, actually, had it not been for that event, I would not have received this opportunity today. So in fact, it was a blessing. This happens reoccurringly in our lives. All the time we see this. And we always conclude that. The thing is, Khidr is operating in another world. Now, what is that world in which Khidr is operating? It seems to be an interdimensional world. It doesn't have the laws, the rights and wrongs of this world. It has rights and wrongs of its own upon which it is operating. So now Khidr says, look, had I not done this, it would have been usurped. The masakin will wake up in the morning, they will curse their luck. They will say, what wrong did we do? They will despairingly call out to God, why is this happening to me? They will go to a Maulana, they will say, Maulana, give us ta'weed, and we'll make money out of it. But they don't know Khidr was around. And he's done these things. And it's good for them. For example, we need to look into things very carefully. The other thing is this. How did he say it? In today's world, let's say, if there were cameras placed, would we see a Khidr going and breaking a ship, a boat? Or would we see a boat colliding with something and then it's punctured? But in the realm of Moses, where he had entered Khidr's world, it was seen as Khidr breaking a boat. But by our eyes, we would see maybe a projectile going and striking there would be natural sequence of cause and effect. By forensic examination, we always seem to find the causes for the effects, don't we? We never see a hidden hand coming and creating a hole inside a boat. We will always see a rock being thrown there. So the perception of two worlds are very different. In our world, it would transpire as a natural act following the sequence of causality. In Moses' world that he is enjoying now, Khidr is physically breaking it. Okay, next one. As far as the child was concerned.
And as for the child, his parents were believers, and we feared lest he should make disobedience and ingratitude to come upon them. So we desired that their Lord might give them in his place one better than him, in purity and nearer to having compassion.
So now they say, he says the parents are good, the child, we are fearful. Who is we? In the first one, he says, I. He takes responsibility for breaking the boat. I intended that this boat be damaged so that it may not be usurped. In this instance, it is not I anymore, it is we. We feared that the child will grow up and be a source of embarrassment, distress, shame, difficulty for their parents. And we wanted their Lord, the Lord of the parent, to give them better in place of that child. Now I'll ask you something. He is saying we feared. If I fear that this child is going to be a bad child, what am I supposed to do? To pray for that child. To pray to Allah to change his destiny, right? With firm conviction that God changes destiny. Why couldn't Khidr and his whoever we were resort to prayers? Allah says, يَمْحُ اللَّهُ مَا يَشَاءُ وَيُثْبِتُ وَعِنْدَهُ أُمُّ الْكِتَابِ. Allah wipes clean what he wants. He makes firm what he wants, and he has the mother of all books. So Khidr by priority knows that the destiny is not final. So Khidr, you are a very holy person, and those who are with you in this instance, pray to God for God to make this child a better child. How can you take upon yourselves the discretion of killing a child? And you know that their Lord will give them something better, because you know it's already been destined that these couple are going to have a child who will be with them in their old age. So if we take this one out of the picture, another one will be given. Now from Khidr's perspective, well, I'm killing the child, but I don't have certainty. Khashina, we were fearful. There's no surety in Khidr's mind here. We were fearful. Khidr and who? We don't know. It's another realm intertwined in this realm that is influencing this realm. We were fearful that the child might turn out in X, Y, and Z fashion. So we put them to death. But Khidr, our Quran says, من قتل النفس فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض or whatever فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا. For us is the biggest sin. How can you take it upon yourself to kill a child? Well, by killing him at this age, he's gone to paradise, and the parents will be happy as well. Had he lived, he might have gone to hell. But we'll say, how can you play God? How can you play God? Because God could have changed the destiny of this child. But it's not unjust in the mind of Khidr. In which world is he operating? Can you see that? And who are the we here? Because Khidr is not taking the discretion in his own hands. He's saying we. Can you see that? And then their Lord, whose Lord? The parents' Lord will give them someone better. Why not our Lord? Why their Lord? Can you see the nuance here? There's a whole story emerging from it. Now, when the child was killed, if this was done in the 21st century, we would catch the killer, right? Because we would see and trace the signs and so on and so forth, and we'll find out the fingerprints. But in the world of Moses that he was now in, it could have been Khidr killing the child, And in our world, it could have been a child slipping over something, striking the head on something else, and dying. The perspectives would be different. The way we would see it, the way Moses was seeing it. Let's go to the third one.
And as for the wall, it belonged to two orphan boys in the city, and there was beneath it a treasure belonging to them. And their father was a righteous man, so your Lord desired that they should attain their maturity and take out their treasure, a mercy from your Lord. And I did not do it of my own accord.
So that's it. So then beneath the wall was a treasure that belonged to them through their father. Now the wall was recreated or resurrected and put together, re-erected. Why? Because the parents were good, so the favor was being done to the children on behalf of the parent. And God looked after the children on behalf of the parent. Now, when the children would come of age, they wouldn't know that the treasure is beneath the wall. They will accidentally discover it because the wall would break or somebody will dig beneath it and they will find the treasure and it will all be a big coincidence. But they don't know. It's actually being planned years ahead in advance. And that's the karmic effect. If the parent is good, the goodness will come to the children. If parents are bad, then evil will come to the children. Where is the justice in all of this? Can you see that? Something else is happening. We are in a very different world to the one that we imagine, and the Quran is categorically clear that things are not the way you are naively seeing. There is another world, and there are many, many things happening. But look at what Khidr says. Your Lord intended it, O Moses. In the case of the child, their Lord. In the case of the wall, your Lord. So this is now Moses influencing the situation. In the second case, their parents, they were influencing the situation. In the case of the boat, Khidr takes the discretion into his own hands. Now the Quran describes him as our servant, to whom we had taught from ourselves what the mystics call ilmul ladunni, a very esoteric knowledge. But we are seeing that when we read Quran accurately, we understand that no, something else is happening. Normally when we read these verses, we will say, what? Well, Allah intended this, and well, Moses is being told, your Lord, their Lord. I, we, you. He's making these fine distinctions that there are different things at play here that are generating different responses and different actions and interactions. Now, I think I've done my time. If we have any questions, and then I'll say a little bit about Miraj.
Salawat.
Thank you.
Number 4 as well. We got some time for questions, if there are any questions from either side.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh Arif.
Alaikum salam.
When you began the lecture, you said that when you were talking about the surah of Isa, you said that in one the speaker was God, and the other one the speaker was someone else. But you didn't elaborate.
Yes,
Can you please elaborate?
So I hope I don't have to. But when you read the Quran carefully, you will see, I'll just give a brief thing, so just to tease your mind. When you read the Quran, you will see that it's an attribution to God. Just as the Kaaba is an attribution to God, وَإِذَا نَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي فَقَوْا لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ. And when I breathe into him of my spirit, Imam Sadiq says what? God does not have a spirit as such. He attributes it to himself because it's a very noble existence. مَا مَنَعَكَ أَن تَسْجُدَ لِمَا خَلَقْتُ بِيَدَيِّ. What prevented you from prostrating to that which I created with my 2 hands? God does not have 2 hands as such. It's an attribution to God. If you look at the Quran, you will see this. So the verse comes in the Quran, وَلَمَّا آسَفُونَا إِنْتَقَمْنَا مِنْهُمْ. When Pharaoh and his party made us hopeless, or when we despaired, we sought to seek revenge from them. Imam Sadiq was asked, God can't speak like this. Imam Sadiq said, it's not God speaking. These are lofty agencies talking. Now, look at Surah Isra, or Surah Maryam. يَوْمَ نَحْشَرُ الْمُجْرِمِينَ إِلَى الرَّحْمَنِ وَفْدًا. The day in which we raise the guilty ones towards Rahman. So who is the we here? If Rahman is God, then who is we? نَحْشُرُ الْمُجْرِمِينَ إِلَى الرَّحْمَنِ وَفْدًا. So you look at the Quran carefully. I mean, some verses are obvious. وَإِنَّا نَحْنُ السَّافُونَ وَنَحْنُ الْمُسَبِّحُونَ. We are the ones who stand in rows. We are the ones who praise. We know the angel is speaking here. It's not God. Yes? So read it. Read the Quran very, very careful. Or in the case of Qarun, فَخَسَفْنَا بِهِ وَبِدَارِهِ الْأَرْضِ وَمَا كَانَ لَهُ مِنْ فِئَةٍ يَنْصُرُونَهُ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ. And we caused him and his house to be swallowed up by the earth. There was no group who could help him min dunillah, save Allah. Allah has made the other one. He has made the exception. Allah could have intervened. وَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِرَبِّ الْمَشَارِقِ وَالْمَغَارِبِ إِنَّا لَقَادِرُونَ. Surah Ma'arij, is it? I take the oath through the Rabb of Masharik and Magharib. Indeed, we are most capable. I, Rabb, we. In the same verse, small verse. So read it very, very attentively. I'm going to be talking about this a little bit in June, and we'll talk about much more in the Muharram lectures in Birmingham at Al-Mahdi Institute. But we'll approach it very softly, of course.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. In a few of the verses, the heart was equated with the mind. Is the Qur'an trying to tell us about how we should actually think about things? Because in sort of modern times, you're actually encouraged maybe to prioritize logic and rationality rather than the heart. So what's the Qur'an trying to teach us here?
So now you'll have to give me some time, and then we need to hopefully resume this discussion. The Quran talks about fu'ad. Now fu'ad is equated with mind and thinking. The fu'ad is also equated in the Quran with emotion. In the case of the mother of Moses, and we rabatna fu'ad Musa fariga. What was it? The fu'ad of Musa became fariga, empty and lonely. So here it's talking about emotional state. So fu'ad in the Quran is used for a variety of things. Qalb is used for a variety of things as well, and sadr is used for a variety of things. Now there's an overlap at times. But here in these verses, fu'ad means a wise, insightful appraisal of the situation or information. Yeah? So they do not have the fu'ad with which they think. So for example, you are seeing all this meticulous working of existence. How can you just say it's coincidental? There is life in there. It's telling a story. It is not what what it appears to be. There is richness in there. There is depth in there. There is life in there. It's something else altogether. So fu'ad here is in terms of insightful appraisal of the information that you're receiving. In this instance. Yes, but that doesn't mean that it's consistently in this meaning in the Quran.
Assalamu alaikum. We saw those negative actions happen by Khidr alayhi salam, and astonished Musa for that. Even he was a prophet. So do you think this kind of actions happening since Adam until Yawm al-Qiyamah? Because we can see a lot of crimes happening in this life. We don't know, we don't have any explanation. So do you think those happening?
So in the Muharram lectures, I will talk about the intertwined worlds from the Quran. There are intertwined worlds. Now I'll just give you a sampler. So the Quran says to the Prophet, don't you remember we sent 3,000 malaika at Badr? And then we assisted them with 2,000 more, so there are 5,000 malaika. How many Meccans are there? I mean, the Muslims are 315 or whatever, but how many Meccans are there? 1,000. Yeah? Do you need 5,000 angels to kill 1,000 Meccans? That means the angels are very weak. فَضْرِبْ Al-anak, wadrib kull al-banan, right? Go and strike their necks off. We didn't see any necks flying. How many Meccans were killed? 70 odd? Yeah? So 5,000 angels just came and killed 70, and those 70, some of them were killed by Imam Ali, and some by Ja'far, and some by Hamza. And so angels, how many did you strike down? None. Angels did not strike down anybody. Then where did we get this what use are these 5,000 angels? Think about this carefully. There's something else happening. Shaitan says in the Quran, I see what you see not. I see what you see not. I am fearful of God and I'm leaving. What did Shaitan see? You see, the angels were not striking the Meccans. The angels were striking an equal force on the other side, in their own world. And that's why the Quran says, if there are 20 sabir amongst you, how many will you overcome? In takun 20 sabirun taghlib what? What is it? No. It's much more. Alf, right? Or alfain? Alfain, right? Alfain. So 200, is it 20 to 2,000? That's the ratio. So what happens is when the believers were of that strength of faith, they were procuring the other dimension. They were procuring assistance from the other dimension that was huge. And the dimension of the evil people were also procuring their own agents. And the fight was simultaneously happening between, you're going to think I'm mad after this lecture, aren't you? Yeah? The fight was happening between physical bodies and non-physical entities. And don't worry, I'm going to give a whole hour's talk in Muharram about this, the intertwined realms. Yeah? So, and Allah says He sends hafadha upon us. The hafadha means those who save us. So we often find this example that the children are about to fall on something sharp and somehow they miss it. We find that often, don't we? I mean, evolutionary sort of scientists will say, well, it's the evolution of the brain that saves them. But the other interpretation is that no, there's another world intertwined with this one that acts upon the little child. Yeah? And it's worth exploring. So yes, these things have been happening all along. And Khidr wasn't doing evil actions. They were good deeds. But the measure of good and evil is different in this realm of existence and in that realm of existence. And when they get intertwined, what we see evil here is not seen evil there.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. Just to clarify, you said because the Jews broke the law, they were converted to monkeys. What is the source, please?
Quran.
Is it?
Yeah. Kiradatan. Khasiin. That's one reference. The other one is, are they better or the people that we turned into apes and swine, pig? Yeah? And that again begs the question about, well, reincarnation and regression and the nature of the soul. And we do need to open our minds again. I mean, our philosophies, I find, are overly simplistic about the nature of the soul and reincarnation and transmigration and metempsychosis, these words. All of this can be brought into question. I'm going to advertise myself again. I'm giving a paper on this in March. Yeah?
Last question, sorry.
Shaykh Arif, thank you very much for your talk. But your title was Mysteries in the Quran. The biggest mystery and the most important mystery is what happened tonight, night of Miraj.
Yes, yes.
Not only it showed where we originated from or look forward to the Creator, and lots of phenomena involved in that. That's, I think, the biggest mystery in the Quran. It's not a mystery, but now things are getting more relevant with the space exploration and all that.
Yes, yes.
I hope you'll mention about Miraj tonight.
So let's talk about it just a little bit.
Thank you. And can I ask you a final question before I go?
Yes, yes.
You were smoking e-cigarettes.
Yes, yes.
What flavor do you use? Fantastic. Lovely flavor.
So if you are in the realm of Khidr, you're not allowed to divulge it.
I accept.
Okay?
Thank you.
When you're alone with Khidr, that conversation stays there. What you saw at e-cigarette, the people here saw as a glass of water me drinking. Yeah, there you go. See, So why did the Prophet Muhammad go on Miraj? You see, look, the Meccans disbelieved in resurrection and in the hereafter. If you see emphasis in the Quran on the hereafter, it's directly in the context of the Meccans who were denying the hereafter. And the Jewish people, some of their theologians denied hereafter in that way. So the Prophet has now gone, seen the hereafter in the present and seen it. However, the story of Miraj is not a novel story. Before our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ could do Miraj, according to us, Idris has done the same thing. Enoch, according to the old scriptures. Enoch goes to the heavens, and in his visions he sees the same things that the Prophet Muhammad is reporting. There is a possibility that the Muslims may have taken those stories from Enoch and transferred it into Islamic literature, and I'm finding that even in the story of Imam Hussein and Karbala and the numerical 72 and 12 and everything are there within the older scriptures. And we have imported them, a lot of them, right? So it requires a study. So now, Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi laylan min al-masjid al-haram ila masjid al-aqsa. Now, the Prophet was taken from Haram to Aqsa. The Prophet said there was a buraq. Now, because of our inability to understand things to the level we understand today, we have this tendency to give it esoteric and mystical interpretation, a heavenly steed and whatnot. But tell me, if it was a heavenly steed and not of this world, then the Prophet sat on it and he went from Makkah to Aqsa, and en route he sees the caravan coming, and they bear witness that yes, they met him en route to Makkah when he was going to Aqsa. So he was physically there. I'm just saying today we can actually interpret Buraq as some technology, not necessarily some mystical thing or mysterious something, some form of technology. Just like I gave a talk and I said, well, Sulaiman riding a month's ride in an hour on his air or carpet or whatever. Well, we travel from here to France in an hour, don't we? I mean, if somebody wanted to go across the sea and whatever, it'll take them a month, right? Under normal circumstances. But we're doing it in an hour. Is it not possible? So the doctor came to me and said, look, now if somebody has cardiac arrest, we revive him by that treatment according to people of that era. This is wilaya takwiniya, but it's a feat of scientific achievement, right? So look, we need to reinterpret things, by the way. We need to reinterpret and see exactly what the structure of these worlds are when they intertwine. But what is interesting is, when the Prophet Muhammad goes onward from Masjid Aqsa, there must be a portal or something, an interdimensional travel portal or something, I don't know. When he goes onward, this is a very intriguing part of the whole story. Now, when we go into the Quran, فَكَانَ كَعْبَ قَوْسَيْنَ أَوْ أَدْنَى, if you look at that verse, it's not necessarily talking about God. It's not necessarily talking about God, yes? It may be talking about Gabriel or some lofty entity and being. I do not believe, and you do not believe, that God is located in a place. And that union with God is available now, not necessarily going to a place and finding that union. And the description, Kana Kaaba Qawsayn aw Adna, the two bows, why give that physical description? Why give a physical description? Was it a physical ascension? Was it a spiritual ascension? But in a spiritual ascension, we don't know what the word spiritual means anymore. Does spiritual mean in another dimensional body that we already have accompanying us right now? So there are all these unknowns. But فَأَوْحَى إِلَىٰ عَبْدِهِ مَا أَوْحَى, and he revealed, so we feel it's God. But if you look at the verse of the Quran, نَزَّلَ بِهِ رُوحُ الْأَمِينَ and Ruhul Quds. Ruhul Quds has revealed the Quran. Ruhul Amin has revealed the Quran. So here we are seeing that at time the Quran is attributed to God, that God has revealed it. At time نزل به روح القدس على قلبك. Ruhul Quds has revealed it on your heart. So Ruhul Quds is the agency of revelation. Can you see that? Not Ruhul Quds has brought it, but Ruhul Quds has revealed it. Yeah? And Ruhul Quds as well, you know, merits a huge discussion as to what is Ruhul Quds and what is the nature of angelology and the hierarchies of angels, in which when we see Hazrat Jibreel might come at the very low end, and Hazrat Mikael and Hazrat Israfil and Israel might come at the very low end of the hierarchy of angel. Beyond them, what is there? The Karubin and the Hamalatul Arsh and whatever is there. And God doesn't sit on an Arsh, but there is an Arsh there. Dil Arsh, Fastawa al Arsh. So we are seeing that these verses are very, very ambiguous, but what is really striking about the story is that the Prophet found people in hell. And that is actually verified by the Quran in Surah A'raf, that every time a community enters in there, it curses its sister community and says, who has prepared this for us? As if other communities have gone and traveled through the path of hell. And it's a continuous process of creation, going through hell, going through heaven, and whatever happens after that, I don't want to even speculate right now. But if he saw people in heaven and hell, that means generations have passed. And we find hadith literature corroborating this. And we find our archaeological findings also saying that, look, there have been many species around. And some of them could have been very much advanced, maybe even more than we are. So Miraj is not only the spiritual union of the Blessed Prophet with his truth and the ultimate truth of God, ultimate truth to the level possible for humanity, not ultimate truth in itself. Because Kul Huwa, say he is the unknown. Nobody can contemplate him. But Huwa Allah, he is Allah for your consumption, yes. So he has achieved union with Allah, but possibly not Huwa, the real reality that reflects the reality of Allah. So the first thing is he achieved that union. Secondly, he verified that there is a hereafter, which was a very big thing for his immediate audience and for the rest of us, that there is verification. There is hereafter, and he proves it by saying there's a caravan coming from that direction. Now, if you're going to believe that part of it, then you'll have to believe the rest of it as well, because you can't believe half and reject half. So this half is verifiable, the rest of it verified as well. So he went there, he's seen the hereafter, there is a real hereafter. So now believe it and act in accordance with it. So it's a very profound, profound story. But it is not the first time in human history, by human I mean Bashar, those who come from the progeny of Adam, us guys. It's not the very first time that it has happened in our history. It has happened before with Idris, and the Quran verifies that, and the old scriptures verify it.
Thank you very much. We're going to end there. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Thank you very much for that. And inshallah, if you do have questions, Shaykh Arif is around for a few minutes afterwards as well. Just a couple of announcements before we finish. Next week we have Sheikh Shamali who'll be speaking on the different waladat next week. There'll be dinner as well, and there's a children's program starting at 6:30 next week with the topic being prepping for Ramadan, and a cooking workshop for older kids and sadaqah for younger kids. There's a quiz night on Sunday, fundraising for the Calais trip. 17 volunteers from the community here are going to Calais, so inshallah they'll do very well, inshallah. We also have a bake sale over there. Proceeds which is over there, which proceeds will go to those who have suffered due to the earthquake in Turkey. And generally, we do have a range of other events happening. On Sundays, tafsir in the morning, and the Soul Kitchen Food Bank from here and Husseini Madrassah. Every Tuesday, yoga and ladies exercise classes. On Wednesdays, Junjokai martial arts. On Thursdays, Dua Kuman Surah Yasin. On Saturdays, not this week, but normally badminton for young people. And every Friday, we have a range of different talks, which you'll see, inshallah, on the screen with Sheikh Shamali next week. So, inshallah, Please, I look forward to seeing many of you at our future talks going forward. Salawat.